Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales. This is the Leadership Quarter. This is a podcast for revenue, sales, and go-to-market leaders and practitioners that is focused on bringing you insights from the best and brightest the world has to offer. The Leadership Quarter is focused on asking the critical questions. How do we develop and empower sales leaders to build strong cultures and teams to hit our growth goals? Experts from around the world give their experiences and opinions on this critical aspect of sales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. And let's dive into introducing today's guests. Tony Cross has a vision to help over 1 million people in the profession of sales raise their game. CEO and founder of Growth Matters International in South Africa, Tony has a very simple mission in life: make others successful. He is passionate about the profession of sales and believes building strong sales leaders to be one of the most important leverage points in driving success across companies, communities, and families. We get into leadership, coaching, systems, his journey, and so much more. So let's welcome Tony Cross to the program. Tony Cross, I'm really excited to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Paul. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, what part of the world are you coming to us from?
Today I'm coming from a little island in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius. It's the east coast of South Africa where I was born. So I'm, I guess, blessed to be living in what many people call paradise. Yeah, in Mauritius.
Mauritius? I've actually never heard of that. So it's a little island off the coast?
Yeah, it's an island. It's 45 kilometers by 65 kilometers, 1.3 million population. So small island, great culture, great beaches, good hotels. But we started a business here to extend our international business. So I've been here for just over 3 years now.
Oh, that's fantastic. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what your business is? Because I think that's one of the places we want to start.
Yeah, so Growth Matters, we have really a simple design point. Our design point is that no amount of training or enablement or consulting or technology has any sustainable difference unless the sales managers are enabled. It's my view, having come through the ranks of sales, that, sales managers have such a tough job. We may argue that the job is the toughest job in the world, perhaps, because they have such a pressure. We all know, if we've been in sales for any length of time, we start at zero, whether that's zero at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the quarter, or sometimes even the beginning of the month. So it really is a tough role. So we exist to help those sales managers and sales leaders become a lot more effective at what they do. Now, Paul, you work with many sales managers. There's such a misunderstanding, because sales managers are asked to do many things that are not really core to their role. The role of a sales manager is to obviously get the number, but they need to execute a strategy. And they need to do this through their salespeople, not for their salespeople. And they need to drive customer value. So that's the way we see it, is those are the 4 components of their role. And when they focus on that role, they really become effective at it.
So I'm going to take this a little bit to your mission and vision. I was checking out your LinkedIn profile prior, and we've had some discussions about this as well, but there's this big overall hunk and vision that you have to help 1 million people in the profession of sales really raise their game. And so is that you're very, very specific on the sales leadership and management as a focal point. So why is that?
Paul, it's interesting. We work with many what we like to call sales professionals. But really, the leverage, we believe, comes through the role of the sales manager. And if we want to enable 1 million people in the profession of sales, we probably need to work with in the region of 100,000 sales managers over a period of time, because each of them maybe have 10 to 12 sales professionals working for them. But what we often find is that when we enable a sales manager and they really get a team working well together, it starts to spread this positive energy and the positive culture. So soon, the rest of the organization, pre-sales people, for example, start getting impacted by what it is that we're doing. Many times we're actually asked by participants Hey, why are you not working with our product managers, and why are you not working with our customer success people? So there's there's a number of modules that are really useful for those roles. And we say to the sales managers or the sales leaders, go out there and take this message into your organization. So through that, we believe, my business partner, Alan, often jokes. He said, why do we set such a low goal, a low vision of 1 million people? And I said, for me, that, the 1 million people may become 10 million or more. But really, even if it means working with one manager at a time, impacting one manager, the extent or the reach or the leverage of a sales manager is huge. So that's really our vision, as you say.
That's funny. I have this vision in my head of I know when I was a kid that there was this sign on McDonald's when I went to McDonald's, and it said like 2 million or two. I think it was at that time 2 million hamburgers served, right? And now it's like 100 billion or something that they have this thing on. So I feel you and Alan reaching for that same type of multiplication effect.
Yeah, 100%. That, let's call it the 10x, if you like. We really do believe it's a multiplier. Working with one sales manager is a multiplying effect. Working with a sales leader who perhaps has 7 or 8 sales managers is a multiplying effect. So as your McDonald's, maybe it was 2 million then, and now it's 2 trillion. We would be, super happy. I mean, today, the 10th of June, is officially the first World Sales Enablement Day. It's a world day. It's the inaugural one. I read on the internet today, and I posted something on it. And they were talking about there's over 300,000 sales enablement professionals out there. Now, if you multiply that, there's probably 3 million or more sales managers. And if you multiply that out, there's 30 million plus sales professionals, specifically in business to business environments, that we believe we have a good story for.
Well, that's awesome. We share the same mission and vision. It's why we work so well together. It's around this elevating the profession. I'm going to switch a little bit, and I'd like to ask a question. So we're in the sales leadership quarter, and one of the things that I've been asking individuals like yourself is, we talk about leadership, we talk about management, we talk about coaching. What are the differences in your mind between leadership and management? And then I'm going to add an additional question. So I'm going to give you a long, complex question here. But then what does it take to be a good sales leader and a good sales manager? So again, I know I'm giving you a platter. I'm serving you up a long question, but what is the difference between the two? And then how do you get good at each?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Paul. And, we ask this all the time, what's the difference between leadership and management? And as you say, the importance of coaching. But my view is quite simple. A chief revenue officer or a chief sales officer or a sales director, if you like, or a sales manager, they actually have to have leadership skills and they have to have management skills. So what I mean by this is, if you're leading, you're inspiring and you're sharing a vision, and you're developing people with empathy and understanding and as individuals. But you also have to be a manager. You have to hold people accountable, for example. And that's really a management skill. So I often would say you can't separate them. Now, of course, in title, you may be a sales manager or a sales leader or, a certain level compared to another level. But all those roles have to have a leadership capability and a management capability. You also might need to be a counselor. So sales managers might have to be a trainer. They might have to be a counselor. They may have to be a mentor at some point. So you've got these different hats that we wear. And we often, I guess, get confused. Should I really be focusing on management or focusing on leadership? And there's many books out there that talk about, don't be a manager, be a leader. So my view is quite simple. You need to be both. So you need to manage people and you need to manage the tasks, or a process. So when we work with sales managers, for example, we're talking to them about, communication skills and setting a strategy, and, how do you communicate that strategy and inspire people to commit and follow you. But equally well, you need to be managing people and tracking their performance and setting expectations. So I sincerely believe you actually have to be pretty good at both areas. I think the rest of your question was around, the coaching. Is that a leadership skill or is that a management skill? And my simple response would be, it doesn't matter. But all leaders, all managers need to be coaching and need to be coaching more. And I know it's a subject you're very passionate about, and Membrane as an organization is committed to this concept of sales coaching and sales management coaching. It's the number one lever. It doesn't really matter which research you look at or who you speak to. It's the number one leader in terms of improving results in people. And yet it's the first meeting that we cancel. It's postponed. It's moved out. And for many reasons. And the managers we work with often haven't been taught to be coaches. So it's a complex skill. It's not selling. And when we tell managers, hey, Paul, just go and create people that can sell like you can sell because you came from sales, you were very successful, just go and create mini Pauls or mini Tonys. And in reality, coaching in itself is a complex skill. And you have to use leadership ability to read the individual and understand where they're coming from. That's a component of coaching. You need to be making sure you ask great questions. Something you would imagine sales professionals becoming managers are good at. But in our experience, managers don't have the time to take the lengthy process of asking a question and leading their people to insights, as opposed to, hey, Paul, I really just need you to do this. And what I suggest you do on this account is do this, or this deal is do this. So again, I don't think it's necessarily a leadership competence or a management competence. It's both, and in the purest sense, of course, it's a leadership competence. That's where you'd put it if you wanted to put it in a box. But not only leaders coach, managers have to coach, and then they have to hold people accountable. Leaders have to coach and then hold people accountable to going to implement the actions that they agree through the coaching. So I'm hoping I've answered your complex question in a way.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. There's I just did a talk, and in researching this talk, one of the things that I found was fascinating is the growth overall of the coaching industry worldwide and some of the reasons for that. But my estimates that I was looking at was it's grown from about 2.5 billion, 2.4 billion in 22-23 area to projected over 4.6 billion in 27-28 area. So there's a massive growth of this. I have some thoughts about the whys of that, right? But I'm interested. And we can focus on sales coaching specifically, but do you have any thoughts on the why that people are really looking for this, understanding the impact and really looking for this ability to have a one-on-one personal experience that's driving performance?
Yeah, I mean, Paul, I think there's many reasons, but the primary one probably is there's such a demand for it. So what we are seeing with the organizations we work with is individual sales contributors, sales professionals are actually demanding coaching. So they're actually reaching out because they're struggling. They can't necessarily prioritize, what they're doing. They can't necessarily see the blind spots in a deal. So they're actually putting pressure on organizations to say, hey, I need help. But I don't necessarily, specifically again with the new emerging workforce, don't tell me necessarily what I need to do, but help me get there. So I think that's what's shifting. I think the workforce is shifting. So it's the new, let's call it the modern workforce. People want to be treated as an individual. So Paul, as my boss, don't coach me in front of my peers. Don't call me out on my sales numbers in front of my peers. talk to me on a one-on-one basis. So I think demand has increased from the person or the people demanding the coaching. So I'm sensing that's happening. And the second thing is that we've, as enablement professionals, we have spent billions on CRM systems, on technology, on workflow, on training, and the results aren't there. So I'm fairly certain that organizations are saying, training is great. We must train our workforce. We must teach them about products and about, selling skills. But how do we know that it's going to be adopted? And the first question, people like ourselves or you would be answering is, well, you need to coach it. You need to train the people, and then you need to coach them. And we've all read the statistics about, 70% of what you learn in a classroom is lost, within the first, let's call it month, if reinforcement doesn't take place. And what's the easiest way for reinforcement to take place is sales managers or any manager coaching the people, coaching them in the new skills. So I think, if I had to summarize, I would say the demand is increasing from let's say the bottom up. And then second of all, organizations and senior executives are saying, we're tired of spending all this money on, let's call it training sales professional or enabling sales professionals without seeing the return. So something is broken or something needs, to be changed. And therefore the visibility of coaching is increasing for certain.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've seen the same trends. There's another interesting one that I want to get your opinion on, which is as we have more and more information at our fingertips, right? The skill, and we have it all the time, but the skill of taking that information and being able to use it effectively is a really tough one, right? It used to be that salespeople were in this almost as a position of imbalanced power, right? We had more information than the other people. And so, but now it's not at all. And plus we have a boatload of information that's out there that nobody has as well. So what do you think of that? Like a coach being able that is really good at being able to help you distill and define action, help you distill information, but not give you the answers. Like, are you seeing people like craving that? Because I am in market. Like I'm seeing people just absolutely craving that. And I'm just wondering about your opinion.
Yeah, spot on. We certainly are seeing that. There is all of this information, and we have, AI, which apparently is going to solve every problem in sales that has ever existed. And, all of this out there. There is data. Now, of course, sales managers need to take the data, need to look at, for example, a pipeline. But then looking at a pipeline and noticing the patterns, and I want to come back to that word patterns, is vital. And then it's important for them to ask the right questions that leads the sales professional to go, hey, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking I need to go and do this. I need to come to that agreed action. And the moment that happens, the brain, there's a neurochemistry, as you know, in the brain that goes, okay, I'm going to own that. It's kind of my idea. And then the chances of it being executed are much higher than if I just say, Paul, I really think you need to go and, progress these 3 opportunities in your pipeline by doing this. You may think, okay, that's good advice, but, maybe there's something else. But if you come to that conclusion yourself through these great coaching questions, you're going to go, oh, that was a great idea, Paul. Well done, Paul. I'm going to go do this, and I'm committed to doing it. So the buy-in is much higher. And then if I come back to the word pattern, what we see a lot of, Paul, is that people can have as much data, as much information, that they have available to themselves through, CRM systems and technology and AI and ChatGPT and everything. But the ones that succeed as managers or even sales professionals can see patterns in the data. So just as an example, if I'm a manager and I'm coaching, John on 6 deals, and I do it over a period of, let's say, a week, I'm going to notice there's a pattern. If they, let's say, mid-stage deals, mid-sales process deals, I'm going to notice that, let's say, John is not asking the questions around budget. He's doing great, discovery calls and great needs analysis and understanding the scope of the technology. Let's say it's a technology solution, but he's actually not discussing budget, or timing perhaps. And I start to notice a pattern. Now, if I'm a good coach or I'm a good sales manager, I can look at it and say, hold on, I can coach a specific deal. And John will go and he'll go ask a budget question or an investment question. And that's great. And that's good. But what's great is if I've noticed there's a pattern. Now I can work with John and say, John, I'm noticing, you're shying away, you're hesitating with asking the budget related questions. Would it be useful for us to role play a few ideas or discuss, what's worked for me, or, put you in touch with another sales professional who's really good at asking those type of questions, of the customer. Now that's the value of that is massive, because you not only solved it now for one deal, you solved the behavior, for every deal that person's going to work on going forward.
So is this a fair statement if I were to say that a great coach can help an individual take mountains of information, because we're all just drowning in information, right? Can take you from that drowning in information to actually creating meaning. So because that step from information to meaning is a really tough one to take for a lot of people, and not everybody processes data the same way, right? So take from information and data to meaning, and then from meaning to action. Is that a fair statement of what you're trying to say?
To be honest, I wish I had answered the question exactly like that, because that's exactly it. You're taking information to meaning.
I was just using your words, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for that. Because that's spot on. We can, when we work with sales managers, we can give them scripted questions, and that's great, and they start conversations. But the real skill lies in using those questions consistently. Because if I'm asking, John, 10 different questions over his 6 deals, I'm not going to see that pattern. So what we try and do is teach sales managers, listen, it's going to be boring. You're going to ask similar questions to people until you understand these patterns. Once you understand those patterns, you're really going to help unlock their potential. But until you can understand the patterns, you have to be using, I don't want to say scripted, but consistent questions. If you're coaching a deal, is different to coaching an account, is different to coaching, let's say, a pipeline or a forecast. But ask consistent questions. And what we're seeing a lot of, Paul, is leaders ask managers questions, let's say around a forecast, for example. And they're really just asking, hey, are we going to make the forecast? Are we going to hit our number this month or maybe this quarter? And then when the answer is, well, maybe not, maybe 70%, is there anything we can do? And then there's this panic, and is there anything we can do? Can't we bring a few deals forward? And they believe that's forecast discussion or forecast coaching. And we're going, it's not really. That's just getting information and then panicking and, basically telling the manager. And that conversation then spills down into the sales team. Then a manager is asking similar questions to their sales professional. Where if you look at it differently and you say, well, a forecast discussion is different to a pipeline discussion, is different to an opportunity or deal review. Ask the specific questions to answer really what must that person go and do. Notice the patterns, because if the moment you see those patterns, you use the word, it takes the information and it puts it into, let's call it insights. That's what you really need to be doing to be a great coach and a great sales manager.
Yeah, let me ask this question. It's a follow-on. So I have my opinion on it, but what do you see then as the necessity of having an overarching kind of sales methodology to be able to be a really good and powerful sales coach and leader? Do you see those things connected?
I think there is, because you need consistency. If you look at, for example, what tools do you need, sales managers or sales leaders to have? I mean, it's a great question, and there's many, many great tools out there. The way I'd answer the question is, you need a consistent set of frameworks or models. So, as an example, you need a consistent way to see sales strategy, or taking a sales strategy and building sales plans or territory plans from the strategy. You need a consistent way to look at pipeline, a consistent way to look at deal reviews. So whether you use the methodology, and we all know that there's MEDIC and there's PIC and there's MedPIC and there's BANT and there's all of these different methodologies to qualify opportunities, and that's great. Frankly, they all work to some extent, but it needs to be a consistent methodology in the sales team. This is a consistent process, ideally, not overly complicated like some of us want to create, but consistent. And then you need a consistent coaching methodology. And the first thing, we teach sales managers is some of the mindset. So the mindset is asking, not telling. And Paul, you will not believe, or perhaps you will, it's really difficult for sales managers who are under this time pressure and numbers pressure and organizational pressure. It's really difficult for them to do this, because they say, but it's so much quicker just telling John what to do. And we say, asking is not, telling is not coaching. Asking is coaching. So I think in terms of your question, the methodology has to be consistent. So that's a coaching mindset. And then the coaching doesn't have to be complicated. Yes, you need to practice it. Yes, you need to go on the learning journey to understand coaching. But it can be as simple as, we use a methodology ICE. Identify questions, clarify questions, and explore action. And once you get to 3 actions, maybe 4, but once you get to 3 actions, you've done good coaching. Agree the actions, summarize the actions, and then hold the people accountable to those actions. So I'm hoping I've answered your question, but I would be arguing that consistency there is vital.
100%. 100% you've answered my question. I have 2 more questions for you. We could talk about this for days, I think. But you said a word there that I really want to focus on, which I think many coaches, managers, and leaders fail at themselves, as well as they fail at empowering their reps, and that's the word accountability. So, because it seems to be a very bad word a lot of times in culture, but I think it's one of the core things. Like if you have the methodology, you have a strong methodology, you have an amazing ability to coach, you have an amazing ability to talk to people and lead, and you press and you cast a good vision, but you don't hold people accountable for getting anything done, nothing happens. So how do you do that? How do you drive that accountability through an organization and help people understand that it's an amazing thing, not a bad word?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you asked that question, Paul, because it's seen as this negative culture or this bad word. The irony is that when we teach accountability to organizations, the top performers, or even let's call it the middle performers, love it, because they say, finally, people that are passengers in this team are being held accountable. They love it. Generally, it's the underperformers and the people that want to hide in this gray area. They don't like it so much. The way we teach it, Paul, is actually quite simple. For accountability to exist, you have to have crystal clear expectations. There's 4 steps. Crystal clear expectations. You have to measure those expectations, because there's no point in saying, I expect you to do something, and then you can't measure it. Then you need to give feedback. And that feedback is developmental feedback. And that's where coaching takes place. So if you're struggling to do something and meet my expectations, it's my job as your manager to coach you and help you and work with you. And then the 4th step is you need consequences and or incentive. Now in sales, the incentives are often in place. There's commissions, there's incentive trips, there's leaderboards, there's things but you also have to have a consequence. If I agree to an action as a sales professional, what's the consequence if I don't meet the expectation? So if you take those 4 steps, so crystal clear expectations, measurement of the expectations and how you're tracking, feedback and development and help, and then consequences or incentives, that starts to drive accountability. And that formula is actually, it comes from an organization, they used to be called the International Society for Performance Improvement, ISPI. I think they've renamed subsequently, but they came up with that formula. And the irony is the formula is exactly the same for accountability as it is for performance. If you think about it, if for me to perform, I need to know what I need to do. What are the expectations? I need to know how I'm doing. So I need to get some, we need to measure them. And I need help if I'm not meeting them. So that's the coaching component, the developmental feedback. And actually, I need to know what's in it for me if I do this well. I'm the top of the leaderboard. And perhaps what's in it if I don't do this. Because again, the top performers are going, but hold on, Tony, you're holding us accountable to, I don't know, a weekly sales report. But John is always late. John never fills in his weekly sales report. Why should I do it now? You're not actually, there's no consequence. And there's no incentive for us necessarily if we do it and we exceed expectations. So that's the formula that we teach. Now, of course, there's a great amount of detail in each of those blocks. What are the expectations and how many do you have for a period of time and so on. But that's the formula to drive accountability.
No, that is wonderful. I'm so glad I asked that question because that is one of the clearest explanations of how accountability and performance are tied together and actually tied together with coaching that I've ever heard. So thank you. I'm going to take us a slightly different direction for my final question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, do you have a person? If you think back in your history, and I know you're on this mission for 1 million salespeople, and that's going to go to the 10, that's going to go to the 20, maybe 100. We're going to out there elevate the sales profession. But do you have a person or a great sales coach or effective sales leader that you look back in the past and say, dang, that really impacted me?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting question, Paul, and I'd have to think about it, think it through. But I've worked with so many great sales leaders, either me reporting into them or that we've worked for at organizations. So I'd have to think about a particular name. But what I will say is, if you look at what's consistent across who I would regard as a great sales leader or a great sales manager, for me, the one word that comes to mind is balance. They somehow balance this whirlwind of energy, because there's certainly an energy that you need as sales manager or a sales leader to have. They balance it with calmness. There's all of this energy, but they're also calm. When they need to be calm, they've got this structure and they've got this calmness. They balance allowing people to do their own thing in their own way, but they balance it with holding people, responsible and holding, people accountable. They balance being authentic and vulnerable, but also buffering the bad news. We don't want sales managers or sales leaders to be going, this organization and, these people in technical support area and moaning, with the professionals. They've actually got to step up and say, okay, let me deal with that. What can we do? Let me deal with that. What can we do? What can you do? While still being vulnerable and saying, I don't have all the answers. I mean, it's interesting, just an example of one of the sales leaders we worked with. They said, okay, but what if I ask a coaching question, but I don't know the answer? I said, then you say exactly that. You say, I'm new to this coaching. I think I've got a few ideas, but I don't have all the answers. That's why we're co-creating, agreed actions or some ideas on progressing this deal or penetrating this account or whatever it may be. So I'm hoping I've again answered your question, but all of the top sales managers, sales leaders just seem to have this balance. as I say, they're not one thing or the other thing, one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. And I think that's really what makes them, strong sales managers or sales leaders.
I heard something else there. I heard balance, and I heard that willingness to invest is what I mean, I'm taking that from your words, but to be able to have that balance, you need to be able to willing to invest in the company and the understanding of it, but also in the individual enough that you can treat them as that individual and stay in yourself.
Yes, I mean, just to add to that, Paul. I mean, I like the way you put it there. The way you coach a brand new person who's stepped into your team is very different to the 20-year-old, tenured, sales professional who's a strategic account manager. Yes, you can use the same frameworks. You can still have expectations and you can measure them and give them feedback and hold them accountable. But the way you treat them and the way you let's call it handle them is different. And that's okay. And great leaders know that. They know actually that, I'm not going to allow John, to mess with my culture. But equally, well, I'm going to give him a leeway here and there because he's served us well. So it's that, and I guess coming back to your question at the beginning of the conversation, a leader versus a manager. That's a leadership skill, knowing, when to push and when to, pull and when to prod and carrot and stick and, all those leadership concepts. So, I love what you're saying there. They've got to know that, and that sets them apart for sure.
Well, Tony, it has been an absolute blessing and an honor to be with you today. I think you have an amazing grasp and knowledge of this information of this topic. I can tell it's an absolute passion of yours. How do people dive in with you and understand more about Tony and GMI if they want to reach out?
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I can't believe it's 40 minutes and we're done. Because I can hear you're as passionate as I am about these questions and answers. The easiest way is via email, Paul. TonyC@growthmattersintl.com. Very happy. I'll promise anyone I'll reply to any email that I get. That's the easiest way always to reach us or reach me in particular.
Quick question too, do you have a website and are you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely, definitely on LinkedIn, easy enough to find, and a website, www.growthmattersintl.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this time together. Everybody, make sure, if you have any questions on this information that Tony's been sharing, make sure to reach out to him. Amazing company down there in South Africa. And what's the island named again? I forget. It is
Mauritius. Yeah.
Mauritius. So sitting in paradise on the island of Mauritius, Tony will absolutely chat with you and answer any more questions you have on sales management and leadership. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Tony, thank you so much for being on here. And keep shining bright, everybody. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Please take a moment, subscribe, share this podcast on all your favorite platforms, and let's get the word out. This podcast is proud to be brought to you by Membrane.com. We are the world's top B2B sales platform. And in the world of B2B sales, with everything from prospecting to business acquisition to managing complex growth, Membrane has the right size technology for your sales team. Our latest innovation, the Coaching Cockpit, empowers your leaders, managers, and team with the information and tools they need to take their skills to the next level and to take advantage of the exponential power of effective sales coaching. With our technology and the top team of sales partners around the world, Membrane is helping to achieve our driving vision. This is, quite simply, elevating the sales profession. To learn more, find us at www.membrane.com. That is membrain.com, or contact us via email at sales@membrane.com. Keep shining bright and have a wonderful day.